All right, so this is what we're going to talk about today. And you can see I'm going to point out onpasture.com and my email at the bottom there so that if you need more information, you'll know where to go to get it. But I think Sam did a really good job of kind of describing how I started doing this. And basically, I started in 2004. I had worked at Utah State University for the Bureau of Land Management. I was kind of a liaison between the academic people, helping them understand what people in the field needed to know, and then helping people in the field understand what was available from academic institutions like Utah State University. So again, I started trying to figure this out in 2004 using research that was being done at Utah State University. And I just want to show you a little video of how it worked.
Oh, look at that bike. What do cows eat?
Corn, grass, and weeds.
It's easy.
Cows eat weeds. Cows eat weeds.
This is pretty easy. This is fun.
What do cows eat?
Cows eat weeds. Cows eat weeds.
Is this amazing?
I was tickled. It was easy. It was very easy. You can do it.
So what do cows eat? They eat weeds. And you know, sometimes this looks like magic to people, but so what I want to do is really explain to you what the science behind it is, because it's not magic at all. All I did was use the information that was out there to put together this training method. And one of the most critical parts of this is that animals learn what to eat. And the first thing they learn from is their mothers. So different cows in different places will eat different things based on what their herd mates have eaten. They watch mom because obviously she's been successful and survived, and so whatever she's doing is the right thing to do. And it's kind of like all of us do. We eat what our moms give us, pretty much, I guess. So I want to just show you a little bit how that works.
Instead of their normal morning meal, these ewes and their lambs are being offered a meal of Russian olive and carrageenan. Ewes are familiar with both shrubs, but after eating carrageenan, they received a bolus of lithium chloride. This caused nausea and an aversion to carrageenan. The lambs have no experience with either plant, so they choose to eat what mom eats. After eating the shrubs with their mothers each morning for 5 days, the lambs are put into the pen without their mothers. Because they have experience from eating with mom and from positive feedback from the nutrients in Russian olive, they stick to what mom ate and avoid what she avoided. This second set of ewes are averted to Russian olive but eat carrageenan. After exposure to the shrubs, the lambs are sent in to graze without their mothers. Again, they choose to eat what mom ate. For the final morning of the demonstration, both groups of lambs enter the pen to a choice of Russian olive and carrageenan. Our theory is that the lambs whose mothers ate Russian olive will continue to eat Russian olive, and those whose mothers ate carrageenan will eat carrageenan. We've placed C's on the backs of the lambs who should eat carrageenan to help you track their progress. Lambs not marked with C's should eat Russian olive. In just a short time, the lambs separate into the groups representing the foods that their mothers ate. In the process, they try the other food. This is only one of a number of studies showing that an animal's mother is the single most important factor in determining what foods it eats and where it lives. It also demonstrates how young animals try new foods based on what they see their herd mates eating.
One thing that I'd like to add there is that, you know, you saw sheep doing that. I work with cows. This works for all animals because we all have the similar body makeup, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. They used sheep for that demonstration because sheep are a little bit easier to manage than a whole herd of cattle, and they did most of their experiments with sheep. You also saw in that video that there were the lambs, as you know, they were in that little pen with their herd mates, they tried some other foods, and they learned from that how to eat other things. So we also know that animals learn from experience. So I want to show you a little bit about how that works. What you're looking at here is a really scruffy steer. And if you'll notice, what it has in its mouth is a rabbit. It is eating a rabbit. Now, I first saw this picture and it probably changed my life. It made me do what I'm doing today. I saw it in the plant herbivore interaction class taught by Fred Provenza at Utah State University. He had invited me to audit the course because he thought I'd be interested in what they were doing. And I was also working for the Bureau of Land Management, so I had to travel a lot. And sometimes I couldn't stay for whole classes. So the day that he popped this picture up on the wall, I had to leave shortly after that, and I didn't hear all the story. And so I was really kind of concerned the whole week that I was gone, you know, how you do when you're at night, you lay in bed and you're thinking about things. And I would think about this steer and him eating a rabbit, and like, how did he catch it? And does this make animals dangerous for human beings? And so when I got back to the university, I went and talked to Fred about it. And he says, well, no, here's the story. This steer was part of an experiment in the Netherlands where they were looking at how animals, what happened to animals grazing on phosphorus deficient soils. And, you know, that's why he's all scruffy looking like this. He didn't have all of the minerals that he needed to, you know, be healthy. But then one day they were watching and they saw that this steer had found a dead rabbit and it started to eat it. And they were interested in this, and so they threw more dead rabbits in. And pretty soon the entire herd was eating dead rabbits. And why were they doing this? And you already know the answer, but I'll tell you anyway since I can't see your faces. There was phosphorus in the animals' bones, and that basically the steers had experimented with the forages in their pasture and found that the rabbits were actually providing them with what they needed to be healthier. Okay, so this was really incredible to me, and I wanted to learn more about how this works. And so here's how it works. We have a brain and a rumen, or a brain and a stomach, and there are nerves leading, you know, they take a bite, the animals, the food goes into the rumen, and at the same time, there are nerves leading from the nose and the mouth into the brain, and they carry information about the flavor and the scent of the food. And then there are nerves leading from the rumen that go to the brain, or the stomach and go to the brain, and they carry information about the nutritional feedback of whatever that food is. And the brain puts these things together, the smell and the flavor and the feedback about what it, you know, what it just ate. And if it's good feedback, for example, it's solving a nutritional deficiency like the phosphorus, that food will taste good or smell good to us. And if the feedback is bad, then it will, this food won't taste so good. Okay. What we also know based on the research is that an animal's physiology changes over the course of its life, and so what it wants to eat changes over the course of its life as well. So a pregnant cow wants to eat something different than, say, a calf. Or we also have found that they can actually mix their own diets. So, for example, when an animal has enough protein, they can ask for some roughage, or if they've had too much sugar, they can go for protein. I have a little story about that. A friend of mine and I were on a road trip. She hadn't brought along any food, and I hadn't realized how long we were driving. We were driving from her house to a workshop I was supposed to teach. And all we had were bags of candy because she liked candy. So we got really hungry. We ate all the candy and we were overdosed on sugar. So the minute we got to this workshop, we ran inside. We felt sick to our stomachs from so much sugar, and they were having hors d'oeuvres. So we ate cheese and meat and whatever was there to kind of balance us out. And I've actually watched animals do this as well. So there's all kinds of examples, both anecdotal and experimental, that demonstrate that animals can do this. What we also know is that nutrients tend to increase the amount of a food that an animal will eat. And I want to just show you a little example of how this works.
In this video, we see the importance of positive post-ingestive feedback when an animal is choosing which forages to eat. Both groups of hungry sheep are given straw to eat. This group nibbles a bit, but they are rather disinterested since straw is very low in nutrients. This group appears to love straw. The reason? Several days before, researchers poured a starch solution into their rumens each time they ate straw. Their experience is that eating straw results in positive consequences. Meanwhile, without any positive feedback, this group has mostly given up eating. While one group cleans its plate, the other group heads back to the shade.
So I hope this is starting to make a little bit of sense to you and that you're kind of coming along with where I was when I first started working on this. The other thing to know is a little bit about toxins. All plants on the planet have toxins, but there are only a few that are so high in toxins that they will kill us right away. And what we know, excuse me, what we know about toxins is that they tend, excuse me, they tend to decrease the amount of food that an animal will eat. And again, I have a little example of this for you.
These lambs are eating Russian olive. When they finished, researchers dosed them with lithium chloride. The lithium chloride simulates the effects toxins have on animals. Here's their reaction to Russian olive 2 days later. This is their first meal of the morning, and the lambs are hungry. But only these two are brave enough to try it again. Though they spend time sniffing the plant and checking it out, they eat very little. Animals do not avoid foods because they taste bad. They avoid them because they are unfamiliar or because they make animals sick. Learning from negative feedback keeps animals safe from most toxic plants. The second group of lambs is eating carrageenan. Just like the first group of lambs, once they finished, they received a dose of lithium chloride. Here's their reaction to carrageenan 2 days later. For the third part of the demonstration, both groups are led into the pen at the same time and given a choice between Russian olive and carrageenan. If it is true that animals avoid plants that provide negative feedback, the lambs who are given lithium after eating Russian olive should choose to eat carrageenan. The other group of lambs should choose to eat Russian olive. The lambs who are supposed to eat carrageenan are marked with C's to help you track them. Compare the speed these lambs separate into food groups with the lambs who learn from their mothers what to eat and what to avoid. The lambs who learn from personal experience with toxins are much quicker to choose the safe food. Both Russian olive and carrageenan contain toxins. The lambs are able to eat these plants because they eat only small amounts of them and because they have plenty of other nutrients from other foods. Nutrients help animals detoxify plant toxins. Managers can help animals eat foods with toxins by letting them mix a variety of foods or by providing supplements specific to a particular toxin.
Then something else that we're all worried about, in addition to nutrients and toxins, are the pokey weeds. And what I've found is that pokey things are only problems for humans and our soft skin. What you see is a cow eating a cactus pad. Here they eat a lot of cholla, which is that one down in the left-hand corner. And then over on the right side, that's a cow that learned how to eat multiflora rose, and they're pretty good at eating multiflora rose. So I don't really worry about the spines and things like that. They're not such defenses except to us. Okay, let's get into how you train a cow. I basically put together these 4 steps based on the research. So the first one, of course, is to know your weed. You want to know if it what its nutrients and mostly what its toxins are, because my rule of thumb after doing this for many, many years is that if it's green and growing, it's nutritious. But I can look up all of the toxins that are, and I have this particular book. This one is really good as well. They're kind of expensive. So what I did for you guys is I put together this edible weeds and training recipe. I think it came to you in email, but there'll be a link to that as well. And I put together all the information that I have about weeds that people have asked me about or that I've trained, and it'll tell you whether or not I would train these weeds and what kind of precautions I would take if there are any. The next one is choosing your trainees. And what I've found is that animals are good at lifelong learning, especially when it comes to food. I started out with young animals, but when they didn't have young animals to work with, I would work with cow-calf pairs, and I've even worked with very old cows. So they all learned, and it's just because of how our physiology is made that we can learn about foods throughout life. Then I also choose animals based on who's staying on the farm. You don't want to train somebody, you don't want to put someone through college and then send them off to be eaten. And then I choose whatever's easiest for me. You should choose what is easiest for you. You always want healthy animals. Unhealthy animals aren't as capable of making good choices just because they don't feel good. And then I choose a manageable number and temperament. And what that means is that basically I choose at least a dozen to 15 animals. Fewer than that, it seems that I can tell the difference between them and I treat them as individuals. But it's important that we not teach them as individuals, because then we're worried about them, and that appears in our training. The other part is choosing a number that works for you. I've trained, I generally in the West, because herds are larger, I choose about 50 at a time. You can train 25, and sometimes that's your whole herd. I did train 110 cow-calf pairs in pasture once, and that's a lot. So I'd recommend stopping at 50. And then the next step is just basically making the unfamiliar seem familiar to them. And so I create kind of a language of visual and audio words. So here's my truck, for example. They begin to recognize my truck very quickly, and that when my truck shows up, something good is going to happen. And then I use these feed tubs. They're probably not as common in the Northeast. In the West, these are supplement tubs, and you can get them, you can actually get them in recycling at co-ops and things like that. So, and I like the feed tubs because you can put a couple of cow heads in, and that makes them compete for whatever's down at the bottom of the tub and makes them more likely to try things. And then I usually have some kind of audio cue when I'm coming. Here in the West, we often honk when we're coming to the pasture. I've learned that back east, that can mean that there's something going wrong. So you might want to blow a whistle or something like that. But basically, it's like Pavlov's dog. He rang a bell to say, hello, I'm going to feed you, and the dog would start drooling and know that food was coming. So that's kind of what I'm doing with all of these cues. I'm letting them know something good is about to happen. You should run up here and be excited. Again, I use these tubs as part of my language, and over on the right, you see that I was using, well, those are kind of troughs. You can use troughs. And I even have fed on the ground when I was using when I was training in pasture for that really large herd. But what you're doing is you're putting something good to eat inside each of those things so that they know that that tub or that trough means tasty treats, and whatever's in it is going to be good to eat. And then I create this routine that makes the new thing seem normal. And you all know that your animals function according to a routine. You've seen this happen. So what I'm doing is every morning and afternoon, I show up with my truck, I honk my horn, I have the tub, and I put an unfamiliar, nutritious food in that tub. And they run over and they try it. And because every time they do this, it's something good, they're like, oh, every time she shows up, it's good. We're going to do what we're going to come every time she shows up. So the new normal then becomes, I put the grain in the tub, they show up. And so I do the feeding morning and afternoon for 4 days. And on the 5th day, I chop weeds, I put it in the tub, I add some of the nutritious food that they've eaten, some of the grain. And on the 2nd day, or it's actually the 6th day now, I do the same with a little bit less. And then on the 8th, 5th, 6th, 7th day, it's just weeds in the tub. And because they have always gotten good food out of the tubs, then they know that it's something good. I think one thing I forgot to mention about the 4 days when I'm giving them grain, I do a different food each time I feed them so that they're getting a feel for that food isn't just one thing. It could be lumpy grain, it could be pellets, it could be feed cubes, it could be, and usually I choose, I just go to the feed co-op and I choose things like whatever's high in protein. So it could be rolled oats, rolled corn, soybean meal. I've used cottonseed meal, alfalfa pellets, alfalfa cubes, just all kinds of different things. Rolled corn, steamed corn. They have kind of that combo, barley mixed with molasses, things like that. Okay.
The basic plan is this. Every morning and afternoon for 4 days, I'll feed an unfamiliar, nutritious food. Because the heifers will get good nutritional feedback from the foods, they will learn to like them. Because of their good experiences, they will start to expect that everything I bring them will be good to eat, so they'll try new foods more readily. Since my first challenge was just to get the cows to come to the feed tubs, I decided to start with a food they might recognize. The heifers had eaten dried ear corn over the winter, so I fed rolled corn the first day, luring them down with a grain bag and a little trail of corn to the tubs. The heifers learned so rapidly that by that afternoon they came when they saw me. On, heifers! of the 4th day, I fed the heifers hay cubes. Of course, the flavor and smell were familiar, but the size and shape made it harder for them to eat it. In preparation for feeding diffuse snapweed, I wanted the heifers to have some practice eating things that took a little more time. What I was seeing at this point was cows excited about coming for food, that eat well, and that clean their plates. So I decided to start on diffuse snapweed for the afternoon feeding. At this stage, the plant is very stemmy with very few leaves. The only parts that seem potentially edible are the buds and flowers, so I focused on gathering those parts of the plant.
Then what I did is I put it in there, sprayed it with molasses, coated it with the red bran, put in a little bit of barley.
Typically, the first time I feed weeds, there is a lot more milling about, and these heifers were no exception. And, as usual, not all of the weeds were eaten immediately.
They left everything. Oh, but a bunch were eaten out of that one. That's good. Okay, I think some were eaten out of that one. Definitely.
On Saturday, my husband joined me to cut weeds, so there was a lot more to feed the heifers, and they were as excited as ever to be fed. They also ate a lot more of the weed than they had the day before. For their 3rd day on knapweed, we gave it to them plain. The cows didn't eat a lot, mostly pulling it out of the buckets and throwing it on the ground. The cows ate the leftover knapweed on the morning of the 7th day, so I decided to feed knapweed once more. The results were just what I hoped for. On the 8th day, the cows rested while we built fence for the pasture trials. Our trial pasture was a little over 2 acres. It included grasses, mullein, musk thistle, a variety of forbs, and several large diffuse knapweed patches. On the morning of the 9th day, I went to see if they were eating knapweed. They came right over to show me.
Here she's doing it.
This is what it looked like for 3 days in the trial pasture. The cows seemed to enjoy the knapweed just as much as they did the grass in the pasture. On the last day in the trial pasture, Rob Alexander and Leo and Babe Hogan came by to check on the heifer's progress.
So what do you think?
This is pretty nasty stuff at this stage. It's yeah, not good. That's unbelievable. I can't get over it either.
So the way it turned out, they did eat it, and they ate it in a pasture setting when we put them into 40 acres instead of 5 acres.
The cows didn't eat every single bud and blossom, but they made some good progress, as shown by these pictures.
So I was tickled.
Okay, so everybody cues in on that word molasses, and they think, oh, well, I could just spray my weeds with molasses. but it's not the silver bullet. That's not how it works. And in fact, unless your animals are familiar with molasses, they're probably not going to go for it. And to demonstrate this, what we did was a little demonstration in California when I was doing some training there. We took one group of animals through the training right up to the point where they were going to start trying weeds. And then we just took another group that had no experience, and we gave them each the same mixture of molasses and weeds. The group that was unfamiliar, who had not been through the training at all, they ate 3 ounces of the weed. The group that had been through the training ate like, I can't remember for sure now, but it was like 91 ounces of weeds. So it was really the training and the getting used to the idea that food is a whole lot of things. That's what really makes this work. So if you're thinking of going out and spraying your weeds with molasses, those people who have tried that, it takes a really long time for that to happen. It's a whole lot of work. And then you have to clean your sprayer, and it's sticky, and it's just a mess. So don't do that. Just do this little training. It's one of the most fun things that I have done in my life. Just being with the animals and doing this, it's really fun to watch them learn. The other thing is that trial pastures really aren't necessary. I built them because I was running tests and I needed to see that the animals were doing what they needed to do. But more recently, all I do is go out in pasture and train them right in pasture where the weeds are. I try and reduce my workload. And that's the point of all of this. The point of all of this is that farmers work way too hard. I wanted to reduce their workloads and help them make more money. And the problem with spraying weeds is that it takes time and money. This, you teach them once and you're done. And the other part is that you don't have to teach your animals to eat every single weed. What I've found is this training opens their minds to the idea that food is a whole variety of things. And so my trainees have always started with one weed, and then they'll eat another and they'll eat another. So whereas when I first started doing this, I would try and teach them, for example, the first time I did it, I taught Canada thistle, leafy spurge, and spotted knapweed. You don't have to do that. And one really good thing about having worked with those tubs or some kind of training language like that is that you can, like, sometimes when I want them to eat a new weed that they haven't started on yet, is I bring out the tub and I put it near the weeds that I want them to eat, and I chop some of those weeds and I put them in the tubs, and the animals come over and they're like, hey, look, it's the tasty treat tubs. Let's eat what's in it. And then they realize that what they're eating is sitting right next to the tub, and they'll eat that too. And I've done this a lot of times, so I know that it works. So how much does it cost? I haven't updated my numbers because I know that prices have gone up, but when I've been doing this, like, I don't know, probably five years ago, these numbers come from. $250 a trainee. It's really inexpensive. The more expensive part is adjusting your regular schedule so that you can fit this in. And I know that that's hard. But trust me, just do it. Just do it this spring, and you won't ever have to do it again. Just do it once. As long as you have one weed-eating animal on your property, they'll train the others to do this, and you'll save time and money. The most difficult part of this, of course, is changing our minds, because so many of us for so long have looked at weeds as the enemy, but they're incredibly resilient. They're there when our other forage may not be due to drought or whatever. And their nutritional values run higher than most grasses and other forage that we think animals should eat. And basically, having done some of the math, if you train your animals to eat weeds, you'll have about 43% more forage, and you can use that to raise more animals, perhaps, or make more money. So just a thought. Okay, so why should you teach your cows to eat weeds or any other, this works with goats. I've done goats, sheep, buffalo, bison, cows, this works for all animals. You can even use it to teach your kids, but it's a little trickier. And the answer is you need cheap, good quality forage. And weeds are cheap, good quality forage.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, so if you want to read more, you can go to onpasture.com. I ran On Pasture for almost 10 years. There are more than 2,500 articles up there about all kinds of things, from grazing management to weed management, fencing. It's everything that a grazier needs to know. And I send out a weekly email because it's a library, I send out a weekly email that basically gives you a collection of timely articles. It only functions at this point. I'm retired, and it only functions at this point as long as readers send in tips. And those cover the nominal maintenance costs for, to pay for a website online, keep it going. So you can go there on pasture.com and read all kinds of stuff. You can look for more stuff about weeds. I've written lots of articles about the training and how that works. And there's also one where you can go and it'll give you a link to my my YouTube channel that has lots of videos about cows eating weeds. And if you have questions, you can reach me at Kathy@onpasture.com. There you go.